Seeing none, we can move to approval of the minutes. It's the March 8th meeting, or March 8th, 2021 meeting. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes? All right. Hearing and seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Cummings moves approval.
It's moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Fredson, second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll?
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin. And Barber.
I just got in, so I don't know what I'm voting on here. Could you repeat?
The minutes.
Minutes.
Councilmember.
Aye.
And then Barber.
Aye. With that, the minutes are approved. Next, we're moving on to something we haven't seen for a while, but always makes me happy. We're moving on to employee recognition. I think I'm turning the floor over to Wes.
Great. Thank you, Chair Barber and council members. We haven't seen this for a while. We've always in the past brought periodic employee recognitions to the Transportation Committee to be recognized. And we stopped doing it when we went virtual, thinking that this would be more temporary than it is. And well, we've waited long enough and want to get back to doing the employee recognitions on a regular basis. And this is an opportunity for the Transportation Committee to recognize the extraordinary work of our employees. I will say this, in this case, it's not only extraordinary, it's heroic and it's exciting. And we don't always want it to be this heroic and exciting in the future. And I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne Parsons, the Transportation Manager, South Garage, to introduce our honoree today.
Good afternoon, Chair Barber and members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Dwayne Parsons. I'm the Transportation Manager for the South Garage. I'm here today to present Bus Operator 2141, Tony Fitzgerald, for recognition of his courageous actions on February the 12th, 2012. The details of the event are contained in the following article. Operator springs to action after encountering a scary scene. South Garage operator Tony Fitzgerald has just left the Cedar Grove Transit Station when he saw a vehicle in front of his red line bus begin to spin, crash into a snowbank, and send a puff of snow into the air. As he got closer, he realized the gravity of what he just witnessed. A small pickup truck, its driver still seated in the driver's seat, was teetering over the edge of the Highway 77 bridge spanning the Minnesota River. I expected to see a car up against the snowbank, and instead it was up over the wall, half on and half off, Fitzgerald said this week. I swore to myself, immediately pulled over and contacted the Transit Control Center. Fitzgerald briefly stopped at the driver's side door, but the man inside was initially unresponsive and the door was too badly damaged to open more than a few inches. While another man went to the passenger side door, successfully freeing the driver, Fitzgerald joined others who were adding their body weight and sandbags to the truck bed, hoping to keep the vehicle from falling 40 feet into the wetlands below. When the driver was safely out of the vehicle, Fitzgerald invited him onto the bus where he could collect himself and stay warm. Minutes later, emergency responders arrived and Fitzgerald continued in service, relieved that no one was harmed. I've seen more accidents and spinouts on that highway in the past few weeks than I have in more than 20 years of driving, but I've never experienced anything like that before, he said. Footage of the February 12th incident, captured by highway cameras, later appeared on the news. The driver of the truck reportedly had no serious injuries, and the truck was safely recovered without falling off the bridge. With that, I present bus driver Tony Fitzgerald.
Yay. I'd say virtual applause. And I just want to say thank you. It's so nice that we're doing this, and what a great thing to bring to us too as we bring back employee recognition. To Tony, congratulations, and really thank you for your courage and your quick thinking. We know you guys do this every day, but this was really something where we got to shine as the problem solvers in the world. So congratulations and thank you so much.
Chair Barber, I'm wondering if we can get Mr. Fitzgerald closer to the camera so we can see him. You're too far away. You're the one being recognized here.
I'm trying to maintain social distancing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And really, thank you for your quick thinking. I mean, that's really going above and beyond and very appreciative. And I'm sure that driver is more than appreciative. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. Well, that was fun. It's nice to do that again. Next, we're on to our next order of business is the tab report. And we have Mr. Dugan here.
Yes. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, honorable committee members, General Manager Kleistra, Director Thompson, and of course, Jenna. But may I particularly extend a warm welcome to Mr. Fitzgerald. I'm not sure I would have done the same. I probably would have chickened out, sir. But congratulations to you. The chair's report from TAB. We welcome 2 new TAB members, Council Member Jessica Robertson from Blaine and Council Member Bob Coughlin from Savage under the auspices of Chair Barber, and Council Member Lidstrom, it handles Blaine. The MnDOT report, MnDOT is still waiting guidance on federal COVID relief funds, which will be coming. And MnDOT announced the revival of 2 sets of grants. One is called an Infra Grant, and it stands for the Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation's Infrastructure for Rebuilding America, and it concentrates on highway and freight routes of national and regional significance. And MnDOT is planning to use this for an I-494 project. The second grant that has been reestablished was formerly known as the Tiger Grant. It's now called the Build Grant, as in better utilizing investments to leverage development. And it is the federal government's push towards road, rail, transit, and port projects that meet national objectives. MnDOT also announced that it adopted the recommendations proposed by its Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council. And a couple of those recommendations for you are clean fuel support, electric vehicle support, increasing charging infrastructure, and a 20% reduction in vehicle miles traveled by 2050, that's 50, prioritizing HOV lanes and other solutions before going to roadway expansion. In the MPCA report, you may be interested to know that the Clean Car Minnesota rulemaking comment period ended and they received 10,000 comments. From the MAC, which I always find interesting, the Metropolitan Airport Commissions, going through security during spring break were 26,000 people per day. In 2019, it was 45,000. March had an average of 339 daily flights, and April plans 343 flights. Currently, MAC is utilizing 146 domestic routes and 20 international. MAC itself opened a rapid COVID test site on the connector bridge between the F as in Frank and G as in George concourse. The results cost $99 and take only 15 to 30 minutes. All kinds of payment is accepted, but what MAC wished to make everyone aware that some airlines and destinations are now requiring tests before boarding, and all travelers, perhaps your constituents, when you talk with them, should obviously check with their airlines and get there early. And Delta's rapid test site is now closed. From the TAC chair, John Solberg, TAC is doing presentations on the Minnesota Go Plan, which, as you know, is more formally known as the statewide multimodal transportation plan. It's a 50-year plan of visioning for all transportation needs in the state, and it started in 2011. TAC is also reviewing a program on how to make changes to the RBT and the Regional Bicycle Trail Network. These will be presented to the TAB in the future. I know in your consent agenda, you have 2 streamlined TIP amendments, and if I just may, even though they're consent, as you will recall, streamlined TIP amendments are allowed if they are consistent with the transportation policy plan, not regionally significant, and no formal scope change. Not regionally significant, again, I'm sure you're aware, but I'll just say it anyway, is from the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR, which is the codified government regulations, and regionally significant goes to the aspects of what you would think, regional employment centers, sports complexes, large housing developments, principal arterial highways, etc. But when we hear the words regionally significant, and although used in the TPP, it is a federal regulation. The first streamlined TIP amendment is in Councilmember Gonzalez's district, and it's a drainage repair from Scandia to Franconia on Highway 95, which I learned goes from St. Cloud to Cottage Grove. And the second one is a Section 5310 streamlined TIP, and that's a timing issue of when the vehicles are to be purchased. The third business item the TAB dealt with is on your non-consent agenda as item number 5, the federal performance measures. On the information sessions, as I conclude, the regional solicitation feedback and preparation for the next 2022 solicitation. The major issues that will be looked at from 2020 is unique projects, geographical balance, simplifying categories and scoring measures, evaluating new measures in 2020 as to how, or I should say, yes, how they worked. And these were affordable housing, connection to affordable housing, and pedestrian safety. And then also a sensitivity analysis, which Mr. Thompson can certainly correct me on, but as I understand it, it is a statistical analysis of the impact of each scoring measure on the outcome, the total outcome of the score. And again, Director Thompson can certainly correct me on that. And we had presentations about equity considerations in transportation policy. And as I'm sure you know, they are on the Met Council research site. And the first was by Dr. Edward Getz, who's the director of the Center of Urban and Regional Affairs at the U. And his topic was whiteness and urban planning. And the gist is that the racial concern, or the concern of race, has always been prominent in urban planning, but not whiteness. And race in this context is related to BIPOC populations and community. The next presentation, continuing equity considerations beyond concentrated areas of concentrated poverty, was presented by your own researchers, Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Ryber Torres. And basically, it is a moving away from the HUD definition of racially concentrated areas of poverty towards a new, more general areas of concentrated poverty. And the way, in effect, what would happen is there could be, in future solicitations, that would be, depending on you folks, bonus points for engagement and how a project affects lives in the area, as opposed to 6 years earlier, that was not brought up. And it would treat the full spectrum of inequality, root causes, and a better understanding of the census tracts that make up an area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Degan. Questions from council members or comments? All right, seeing none, thanks again, Peter. And then we will move absolutely on to reports. We have MTS Director Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. Updates this week.
The infra loan program that Peter mentioned that was discussed by MnDOT at TAB is actually a application that was submitted last Friday as a partnership between the Met Council and MnDOT. This is an application requesting $84 million through the federal infra program for the I-494 highway project in Bloomington, Richfield, and Medina. This is funding that would submit funding already secured through the Corridors of Commerce program for the project that adds a min-pass lane on the corridor, rebuilds the 35W 494 interchange, and rebuilds interchanges at Portland and 12. This is a key project that we've identified in the TPP, and it's expected to start construction later this year. This federal grant, if awarded, would allow several phases of the project that are going to be delayed if we do not get this funding. So anticipating it's a highly competitive grant, but I think the state in this project is well positioned for a project in this category of funding at the federal level. As a COVID update, last week we had only one reported positive test among our contracted transit workforce, so very good news there. Ridership for Metro Mobility continues its slow rebound, with ridership now at about 55 to 60% of pre-COVID levels. And there are some signs that the growth of ridership is accelerating on Metro Mobility in the past couple of weeks. And we kind of correlate that to the uptick in vaccines and anticipate that will be a lot more return to ridership among our Metro Mobility customers after they've all completed their vaccine process. Our essential healthcare worker trips have been reduced to about 50% of their peak demand, but seem to be steadying out at that level. And that change is due to us implementing a fare that began on March 1st. We will continue to monitor that, but with the Metro Mobility demand, we still are able to handle healthcare worker levels, trips at about that level. And on some good news, last week, all the operators for our contractors and suburban transit providers have been offered vaccine appointments. They are in the group that has been prioritized as 1B along with Metro Transit. And those vaccine appointments have primarily been offered through the state's Mall of America site. The Ramsey County also stepped forward and offered 600 appointments for Metro Mobility drivers. And we do know a lot of our contracted drivers and operators are also, once they became eligible, found some of their own test sites for vaccines too, at maybe local pharmacies or local places. But it's good news. We're getting our frontline drivers into the system for getting vaccines. So with that, Madam Chair, I conclude my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thompson, I'm curious on the Infra Grant, if MnDOT is successful in getting that grant. I know it's very competitive, but if they are, and currently that min-pass lane on 494 is a ways down as far as a priority in that overall scope of that project. So would it only be, first of all, I guess I have a couple questions. What's the period of time in which that money would have to be expended? And then would it reorder just the min-pass portion? I know they've got it divided down into sections and different projects. So would it just be the min-pass portion of the project that would be moved up, or would it sort of reorder the priorities of the 494 project in general?
That's a great question, Madam Chair, Council Member. They've divided that project, I believe, into 9 different segments that can be prioritized. If this grant were to be awarded, I think this would get us to segment 6, which includes min-pass, a portion of the min-pass lane from 100 to 35W. It is not the full vision for min-pass on this corridor. But it also, by rebuilding the port, it funds the Portland interchange and the 12th Avenue and the railroad bridge, which it's going to accommodate a future min-pass lane. And so it's setting up for that. But MnDOT has also kind of looked to the future and says they're going to get the whole project ready as they search for additional funding. We're probably at about $100 million gap if we receive this federal award. They want to be ready with the design
so that if there's a new transportation package or new federal funding, that they can have one construction project. And so they're preparing for that. It's going to take a lot of heavy lift to get that, fund that gap, but it would be such a better project and also such less disruption if they can be built as one project instead of a couple projects over a 10 or 15-year cycle. So I think this is an important step, but there's still a significant gap that needs to be filled to complete the full vision for that project.
A quick follow-up?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for that. Hopefully with infrastructure rising up the federal levels in importance, the funding opportunities will change. But is there a time frame in which that infra grant has to be spent?
Yes, there is a time frame. I don't know it offhand, but the way this project is being set up, it would start construction in the fall of 2022. And this federal money we'd meet their timeline for sure, because all that's required is that the project must start. I think before 2024, and there's no problem starting that phase. So I don't think there's any risk, and that actually makes that's a significant advantage to this project nationally, because being ready is one of the criteria for being competitive on this process. And I think this process is probably more ready than almost any major project in the United States because it's been in the development for so long. And so I think there's a lot of good reasons why this should be very competitive, and that's one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? I'm going to be very hopeful for the 494 project, being as I'm a South Metro resident. So yeah, it would be nice to get it done all at one time. That would be much better and be very helpful for severe congestion area or problems in the Metro and the South Side. On to next, General Manager Koistra.
Madam Chair and members of the council, I'm going to start with COVID update. I was just thinking as we were talking that I'm going to celebrate the day I don't have to talk about COVID in my report, but we still do. It's still really important to us. It's still something we're managing through and really impacts us on a day-to-day basis. But Metro Transit has had a total of 382 employees who have tested positive now for COVID since the start of the pandemic 1 year ago. Since the last Transportation Committee meeting on March 8th, we've had 7 employees test positive for COVID. We're not seeing any patterns or hotspots by work location, and we're not experiencing any operational impacts. And I say that a lot when I give these COVID reports, but that's not by accident. We do a lot of work on contact tracing, on masking, and so forth that I think really has held down the impact on a very large workforce. In terms of a vaccine update, as of this time, as Nick mentioned, all Metro Transit 1B employees are eligible for COVID-19 vaccinations. 1B employees are typically those employees who are online transit workers, cleaners, operators, etc., people who have a contact with the public or contact with numbers of other employees. And last week, our vendor was able to deliver COVID-19 vaccinations to more than 600 bus and train operators at the Mall of America clinic site. We also know that we've had another vaccination opportunity here at Haywood that came upon us because of the availability of vaccines that were not being used that we took advantage of. So we know between that and other opportunities that operators have taken advantage of based upon their qualifications for vaccines, we believe we have nearly 1,000 of our operators who have received and transit workers who have received at least one shot. So it's good to see that happening. When I was at the garages for Transit Operator Appreciation Day, I had a number of them volunteer that they'd already signed up for this, and you can see that they're really appreciative that this is available. We've worked hard to get prioritization for the transit workers, and as have the transit workers in terms of getting prioritization for vaccines. Over the weekend, the vendor began contacting all other 1B Metro Transit employees to offer the vaccine this week at the Mall of America site. Beyond our work to vaccinate Metro Transit frontline essential workers, we continue to work with the Minnesota Department of Health to pilot the mobile vaccination buses. Our staff are really excited about that opportunity, and the goal remains to have the first one of these buses ready for deployment by mid-April. And we're anticipating up to six buses total being used to get to underserved, hard to reach populations throughout the metro and the state. It'll be a statewide effort. COVID continues to affect ridership. Latest ridership statistics show that ridership is down 59% system-wide. Bus is down 58%. Blue Line is down 61%. Green Line is down 57% rather. North Star is down 96%. I will say that we're starting to see improvements. I can recall not too long ago where I was reporting Blue Line and Green Line ridership down more than 70%. So we are starting to see a little build back in ridership, although slow. We are also involved in trial preparations. Metro Transit continues to monitor and plan for potential service impacts due to the trial of Derek Chauvin, and jury selection on the Chauvin trial began March 8th, the same date of our last committee meeting. There were demonstrations in downtown Minneapolis on the first day, and transit service experienced some minimal service impact. Since that date, there have been some additional marches rather than demonstrations, and our planning efforts seem to be paying off as we are quickly able to make service adjustments and communicate in real time with our customers via ride alerts and social media. Transit police and operations remain connected with the Operations Safety Net unified command structure and will be fully engaged as the trial moves forward, and opening arguments are made as scheduled on March 29th. With regard to better bus stops, later this week, our Engineering and Facilities Department will mail letters to Minneapolis and St. Paul City Council members regarding the 2021 Better Bus Stops planned work. Every spring, we send these letters as a courtesy at the start of every construction season. Metropolitan Council members who represent the districts where we have planned improvements will also be copied into these letters to City Council members. As you know, Better Bus Stops program is aimed to improve the customer's waiting experience with shelter replacements or upgrades. And in 2021, our program plans to add up to 25 new shelters, replace up to 30 aged shelters, and construct up to 50 accessible boarding pads at bus stops without shelters. So there's a lot of work ahead of us on that, and those activities in your district you'll be receiving notice of. I'll finally just mention that I had an opportunity to visit each of the bus garages on Transit Driver Appreciation Day, or Operator Appreciation Day as we refer to them. And it was really a great experience. I hadn't been out to the garages for some time because of COVID protocols. I was masked. I have had my vaccination, so I felt more comfortable going out in that respect. And I really appreciate the work that our operators really dedicate themselves to, and they have been at the front lines throughout all this. And so I think it's worth saying again that it's just remarkable work, and it's heroic work, and they're not recognized enough for that work. It was really, I really felt that the attitudes were very good at the garages. They certainly greeted me warmly and graciously, and I appreciate that as well, because it hasn't been easy for them. So with that, I'm available for questions or comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment, Wes, I think, the video, the appreciation video was really, really great. And it's unfortunate that we can't be appreciating in person. Hopefully next year we can, but I would urge anyone on the council who maybe hasn't viewed the video to go ahead and do it. I think that they did just a great job, and it really, the sentiments that were expressed, I think, were really heartfelt, and it was fun to watch. Made me smile.
That's great to hear.
Additional questions or comments from council members? Just my comment, continue to spread the word to our operators, how proud we are of what they've been through this year and what they've done. And how they've accomplished everything they've done with such grace. It's much appreciated. So
I will do that. Thank you, Chair Barbara.
thank you. Then we are moving on to business. Our first item of business is the items on consent. There are 3 items on consent. So I would entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
I would move that motion. This is Sterner.
Moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Second, Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Jenna, would you call the roll, please?
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Fredson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
And Barber.
Aye. With that, the items on consent pass. Next, we're on to business item 2021-57, a joint committee item. It is the 2021 first quarter budget amendment, and we have Ed Petrie and I believe Heather Augustin Hebner on the line. Oh, I can't hear you, Ed.
Now can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
You gotta love technology these days. Thank you very much, Chair. Once again, Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit, and
I'm Heather Augustin Hebner, Finance Director for MTS.
And Chair and committee members, we are here this evening to present the first quarter budget amendment. It'll have changes to both the capital side and the operating side. And what I'll do, Chair, is I will present the information from Metro Transit. I'll go through the capital items and the operating, answer any questions, and then move it on to Heather. So with the amendment this evening, on Metro Transit on the capital side, we first all have an administrative adjustment for $5 million. What we are doing is we are moving $5 million from an undesignated project called Future BRT projects, and then moving it into the designated, the E-line project. This is actually state money, state bond money that we received at the last legislative session last year. When we brought this money forward last November, we put it all into the E-line and the D-line. We had a $5 million balance left that was left undesignated. Didn't know which one of the BRTs it needed to go to. So at that time, we set it into this undesignated future BRT project and said we would then come back at a future meeting when we decided which one of the projects it should go to. And we've decided now it should go to the E-line project. So we're just administratively moving it from the undesignated BRT into a designated BRT project. Metro Transit also has 9 projects that we are closing, recommending for closing this evening. These projects have fully expended their local and federal funds. They're complete, and we're ready to close them so we can administratively get them off the books. But these projects are complete. The balance of the projects, or the meat of the amendment, if you will, is a number of projects that Metro Transit is recommending that we move forward this evening. These are projects that were in the council adopted CIP. As funding has now become available, we're recommending to move them from the CIP into the capital budget. There are a number of just small projects for Metro Transit. They include the light rail, the LRT blue rail replacement, fare collection equipment, which includes both ticket vending machines and our bus fare boxes, some safety scaffolding and some mobile ladders for our overhaul base, some transit yard management system, IS system upgrades, improvements to both support and public facilities, and also some capital improvements to our support facilities, some improvements to our LRT signals, replacements of some of our non-revenue vehicle fleet, and some of our support facilities. We're going to be beginning our initiative of replacing some of the garage doors. The total of these projects, the total portion for the 2021 budget is $7,147,860. That would impact the 2021 budget. And the multi-year authorization for Metro Transit is $11,870,844. So with that, Madam Chair, I would answer any questions on the capital piece, and then I can move on to Metro Transit operating.
Any questions from council members on that part? All right, go ahead with the operating.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The operating for Metro Transit is a very easy item, or it's a very small item. We're actually recognizing $280,000. It is from the Ramsey County Regional Railroad Authority. They're going to pay for some of the beginning staff time on the Rush Line project. This is what we have done with all of our other BRT and major capital projects. We will first start with some seed money to pay for some of the initial operating expenses before the project moves into a capital phase. This will pay for some of the agency coordination between us and Ramsey County, some environmental review, some of the beginning agreement development processes. So this will be paid. It's $280,000 coming in to pay for staff time for Ramsey County Regional Railroad. And I would stand for any questions on that, Madam Chair.
Any questions from council members?
Just sounds like a smooth running machine. Operating machine.
Well, thank you, Chair Cooney. Members, yeah, this amendment, like Heather and I had talked earlier this evening, this is one of our easier amendments for the year, and it's basically it's moving stuff right from the CIP and right into the capital budget. It's a pretty easy amendment this evening. So.
Perfect, thank you, Ed. One more check for questions. All right, and we'll turn it over to Heather.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
All right, great. Well, Madam Chair, committee members, Heather Augustin Hebner, Finance Director for MTS. And like Ed said, this is a pretty cut and dry business amendment or budget amendment for us also. So in the capital portion of our budget, we propose to close about 40 completed projects and bring forward about $13.5 million in federal funds and about $2.4 million in RTC as our local match. These dollars are going to be used to purchase buses that are already in the CIP. They will go for Metro Mobility, suburban transit providers, and contracted fixed route. This amendment also programs suburban transit provider undesignated funds to projects of their own choosing. As a quick reminder, the suburban transit providers and all providers in the region earn federal formula dollars through kind of some national statistic reporting that we do. So what the council does is we bring the dollars into our capital program and then defederalize those for the suburban transit providers. We either give them RTC if the projects are capital in nature, or we swap for motor vehicle sales tax if they are not eligible for bonds. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in this amendment. The amendment also authorizes authorizes just shy of $1.4 million in motor vehicle sales tax to be transferred from the contracted services operating budget to the capital program, and an equal amount of federal funds to be transferred from the capital program to the contracted services operating budget. So really what we're doing is we're doing a one-for-one moving of dollars from the capital program to the operating, and then the operating program to the capital, so that eligible funds can be used for particular projects. The motor vehicle sales tax will be used in capital program for engines, transmissions, mid-life vehicle rehabilitations, and predominantly suburban transit provider projects that aren't eligible to be funded with regional bonds. Again, it's a dollar-for-dollar match. It has no impact on regional MVEST allocations, MVEST reserves, or planned capital projects. This budget amendment demonstrates commitment towards asset preservation and also supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by assessing the future needs, responsible planning, and management of resources for Metro Transit and Metropolitan Transportation Services. This amendment provides funding for deferred maintenance that has been deferred due to lack of funding and absence of funding source. The budget amendment adds funding that reflects a strategic investment in regional infrastructure that will promote economic competitiveness and create prosperity for the region. This amendment provides immediate cash flow funding to projects that have been deferred, which will allow projects to be completed earlier and maintain a state of good repair, which in turn will contribute towards their economic recovery in the region. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Heather. Are there questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-57JT.
Chambliss moves approval.
It's moved by Chambliss. Is there a second?
Pretzenol, second.
seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Ed and Heather. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're on to our next business item. It's business item number 2021-49. It's the Southwest LRT Civil Construction Change Order. And I believe we have Jim Alexander here.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Committee members, we're talking about business item 2021-49. If you could get to the next slide there, Greg. So this item has two parts. One is to seek approval for a change order itself, but also to seek approval to increase the cumulative change order amount for this civil contract. And we're talking about the the Southwest LRT Civil Construction Contract with LMJV, Contract 15P307A, and it pertains to a corridor protection barrier that I've been talking about recently here. Looking to extend the corridor protection barrier by approximately 1 mile, and that essentially lies between BNSF freight and the LRT trains for Southwest. If you go to the next slide, Greg. Do have some backup slides or just to kind of get everybody grounded what we're looking to do here. Back in 2018, when we received bids on the civil construction work, we did not have this in the plans. And the reason being is that it was going through environmental review at the time. And that environmental review was subsequently completed. And we've been spending our time getting approval of the design from BNSF and then also negotiating a change order. So I bring this forward to you today. Next slide, please. So the corridor protection barrier is located between Bryn Mawr and roughly I-94 as it crosses over the corridor, as you can see on this image. And a couple of things I want to point out and maybe get to the next slide here first. We are, of course, working, next slide there, Greg. We're working alongside freight rail through this corridor, and very tight arrangement. You can kind of see the extent of it in yellow there. Bryn Mawr Station off to the left, and as it extends up to 94 there. Next slide, Greg. So you can tell by this image in the lower part that shows the cross section with the freight rail off to the left and the LRT guideway and the corridor protection wall itself located in between. And just kind of want to point out that the very limited area of working through here, access is really tough to get the contractor in through here. And anytime the contractor is doing any work that could potentially foul the train, which we have trains running through this corridor about 100 times a week, the contractor essentially has to shut down. And as we've been doing work in this corridor, we've learned a lot in terms of what that shutdown means and just the constraints of the site itself. And so thus we have this change order that we've negotiated with the contractor I'd like to present with you today. Next slide, please. So the original contract amount back in the 2018 timeframe where we received the bid was just under $800 million. You see the top row there. And the current authorized cumulative change order authority is 10% of that, or just under 80 million. And thus far, we have executed change orders to the amount of 46 million, leaving a remaining of about 34 million to be spent under that 10% authority. What this change order would do is add $82.6 million to the contract, and that's roughly a little over 10% of the contract amount. And because of this, we're going over that 10% threshold. We are seeking approval to expand that authority another 10.33% to that $162.5 or $0.6 million in cumulative change order authority. That relates to just pulling up my business item real quick here. I just wanted to cite the council procedure regarding the cumulative authority. Council Procurement Procedure 14-1A, Section 2.1.2.23 provides a 10% cumulative change order authority on construction contracts. So that's really standard for the council. And so we would be looking to get authority to step up that authority up to that 20.33%. Next slide, please, Greg. So the action here, Madam Chair, committee members, is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator through the Southwest Light Rail Transit SWLRT Council's authorized representative to negotiate and execute a change order for contract 15P307A with London McCrossan Joint Venture in an amount not to exceed $82,604,905.17 for work related to the construction of a corridor protection barrier, and that the council authorize an additional 10.33% to the 10% cumulative cap of change order authority under Council Procedure 14-1A for contract 15P307A with LMJV. So, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Are there questions from council members? Jim, I just have one quick question. So when it comes to that cumulative authority, so then once the change order capacity would go over that 20.33, that's when things would start coming back through council versus the corridor management committee? Is that?
Madam Chair, yeah, we'd have to bring back to the council. I'm not quite clear if we'd have to go to the management committee or not, if we did go over that cap or not. I'd have to seek direction from the regional administrator on that.
Okay, thank you. I believe Councilmember Chambliss had a question as well.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. Obviously, it's a lot of money, and I can understand the requirement for the barrier. And with it being a change order, it's the same contractor. But is this standard material? Do we have different options? It looks like it's painted concrete. Just want to make sure that, I fully understand the nature of the increase and cost before approval.
Yes, Madam Chair, council members. Say, Greg, I wonder if you could pull up slide number 6 and I could talk to that a little bit. All right. Well, as Greg pulls that slide up, so maybe kind of just back up a little bit. That this is a requirement per our agreement with BNSF that we finalized in 2019, and so without this barrier, we're not able to test or operate trains through this corridor. So it is a requirement. I would say the council member, the primary costs are due to the structure itself. There are about 600 drilled shafts to support this under this. So this wall may seem kind of minor in scheme of things, what's shown there, but we have drilled shafts to provide foundations that will provide lateral support if should a train do a derailment and run into the wall, and that wall needs to be stout enough to prevent any debris from harming the LRT, and vice versa. It's designed to withstand any LRT from fouling the freight rail side. I would say the aesthetics are really minor in the whole scheme of things in terms of the colored concrete. This is something we did commit to the community back in 2017 era. We went through a community-led design input process where the community did have some leeway. We were looking for some input on things, and colored concrete was one of the things. Labeling the Bassett Creek Valley stations you see in this upper image was another. But in terms of costs, those are really minor elements of the whole piece here.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having been involved in light rail since I was on the council in Hopkins and mayor now in the Met Council, watching this project evolve has been quite something. In a perfect world, of course, we would know everything that we were going to confront ahead of time, and it's not a perfect world. I think that the project office has done just an extraordinary job, the engineering, the entire staff, and working with the contractors and negotiating the best prices possible. The complexity, the size, the scope of this project cannot be overstated. That to lay down nearly 15 miles of track through a thriving metropolitan area next to freight rail, next to businesses, next to housing. I mean, it's really extraordinary. We can't, we're not doing this out in the country where we've got all this wide open land. It's threading the needle as we go. Every business has to be operational. Every home has to be able to be accessed. It's really been quite something. We ran a little over last week, Jim, but I wanted to also thank you for that overview that you did to the entire council. I think keeping us apprised of the entire project is really, really important. And the links that you're going to, the project office is going to keep the cities and the residents and the businesses apprised of the next steps and so forth, especially as spring is nearly here and we're going to see the uptick in activity. So lots of challenges, and obviously the project can't be slowed down or shouldn't be slowed down, in my opinion. We need to keep it moving forward, and I thank you and your staff and everybody at the project office that is working to keep this project going, to keep it as affordable as we can. It is the largest project that's ever been undertaken by the state of Minnesota, and it's huge. It's just huge, and lots of challenges, and I'm sure there will be more challenges to come, because again, we can't anticipate everything, but I thank you for this, and I would like to move approval.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings, and well said. So appreciate it, those words very much. We have a motion. Is there a second?
It's Fredson, I'll second.
Seconded by Fredson. Is there any other discussion?
I guess I just had a question. Where does this put us with respect to the funding that we have? How close are we to be over that funding? And if we go over the funding, the federal and the committed funding, where does the rest of the money come from?
Yes, Madam Chair, Council Member. Well, this 82 million would come out of contingency, and so we still have a contingency pot left over for this. I'd have to come back with you the exact number. I don't have that right at my fingertips, but I could provide that for your consideration when you come to the council session to consider this item. And as I said back, you may recall back committee of the whole, I did do a presentation, and if you can maybe go back to that slide 14, if you wouldn't mind at some point, and take a look at the next steps that I laid out in terms of getting through our process. We have the corridor protection, we have the Kenilworth Tunnel we still need to address, and then also the schedule. So those pieces are going to be forthcoming, and we have to take an iterative approach because we just need to keep things moving with these change orders. But we don't have necessarily the full picture, but we have to keep going to keep things on schedule here. So there is going to be some more impact on the contingency. If we go down to a certain level of contingency, we'll certainly have to have those discussions with our funding partners at the county and FTA.
Okay, but the council isn't liable for overages of the project.
Madam Chair, council members, the council is not liable for monies. We don't have any monies into the project except for the original state contribution that occurred several years ago.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other discussion? All right. Then with that, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Ferguson?
Aye.
Fredson?
Aye.
Gonzalez? Gonzalez?
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Sterner?
Aye.
Zirin?
Aye.
Barber?
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Jim. Next, we're on to business item 2021-65. It's on-call track maintenance contract. And guess I'm not completely sure who's presenting this.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Barber, committee members. My name is Tony Klinger. I'm the track manager at Metro Transit.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to present business item 2021-65, contract 20P251 on-call track maintenance. Next slide, please. So as background, we have now been in revenue service for 16 plus years. As such, we have ever increasing and ever changing maintenance requirements along our systems. That could be due to rail breaks, geometry issues, profound alignment deviations, tie-in other material replacements, welding activities that are needed along the alignment right away, as well as work windows that projects need to be completed in to minimize service disruptions. Next slide, please. So the benefit to us of having an on-call track maintenance contractor on board, it's an economic use of labor, material, and equipment. It supplements our own Metro Transit's workforce in completing these tasks. It gives us the ability to schedule planned work and emergency service response on a shorter notice. And there's also a fixed cost for the duration of the contract. Next slide, please. So procurement process and invitation for bid was advertised on January 6th. The DBE project goal was established at 1% for this contract. There were 3 plan holders. Pre-bid meeting was held on January 19th. Public bid opening was held on February 9th. 2 bids were received ranging from $563,204.96 to $1,239,040.20. Railworks passed the DBE evaluation by meeting the DBE commitment. Railworks Track Systems Incorporated submitted the low responsive and responsible bid at $563,204.96. Next slide, please. The proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute a contract with Railworks Track Systems Incorporated to provide on-call and preventative track maintenance to the blue and green lines in an amount not to exceed $1,375,000 for a period of 5 years, and that would be through December 31st of 2025. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Fredson.
Thank you, Chair. And I just I did ask this question of General Manager Cloister before the meeting and got the answer, but I just want to make sure on the record here. So I asked whether or not this would be outsourcing any current work. It sounds like it wouldn't be. Obviously, if it was outsourcing current work, then I would be concerned. But can you confirm that?
Chair Barb and committee members, that is correct. This does not outsource our current work. It only supplements our current workforce and some of the larger scale projects that we have and encounter along our system, as well as emergency response services that's needed that we encounter along the lines.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a really big difference in the bids. Do you have any idea what contributes to the large difference in the 2 bids?
Chair Barb and committee members, I guess I can't speculate why there was such a difference between what the 2 vendors proposed. I would only be speculating on that.
Quick little follow-up, but the scope of the bids was the same?
Yes, that's correct. They were bidding on the same scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any additional, Councilmember Chambliss?
Yeah, I think that was a good question. Well, both questions were good, but especially, whenever I see a big difference, I like to ask myself why, is it somebody's able to get it at a better scale, or is it the quality of the product, or, access to, better sub vendors. If you find that out later, I'd be curious.
I will take note of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional, Councilmember Sterner?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, we see a lot of the times when it's only 2 or 3 bidders, and I know it's a very specialized service, but I just wonder, are we doing enough marketing with all the business out there we're trying to attract and so on? Like, are there other, like, how many proposals did we send out and got 2 back? Is it, were there a lot more than this one? And can we do some interviewing where other companies aren't trying to get the business as well?
Yeah, so Chair Barber, committee members, that's a good question. Our market area, I'm only aware of 2 service providers that could perform the work based on the scope of work that I have, and also the response time needed to perform an emergency repair. It's a very specific type of work when you're dealing with rail maintenance. There are not many that I know of in our market area that are in our region, I guess I should say. Outside of this, there are, but when we have an emergency situation, I need them to respond within a 2-hour window.
Thank you very much.
All right. Additional questions or comments? All right. Seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-65.
Fredson, I'll move the staff recommendation.
And Sterner, second.
Seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Fredson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you very much, Tony. Next, we're on to business item number 2021-69, a same week item. It's the Metro D-Line Station Pylon Contract Award. And we have Shaheen Khazra Jafari here, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Shaheen Khazra Jafari. I'm the BRT project manager for the D-Line. Our request today on business item 2021-69 would authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 19P 385A with ASC Acquisition Company, doing business as Albrecht Sign Company, for the fabrication and delivery of station pylons for BRT and enhanced bus stops at a cost not to exceed $2,010,710, with options for future purchases. The pylon, as shown in the image here, is a signature BRT station marker with capability to provide real-time transit information. It is purchased by the council and provided to the construction contractor for installation. The base order for the new 5-year contract includes 70 pylons and 2 horizontal signs. 68 pylons and the 2 horizontal signs will be for the D-Line BRT, and 2 pylons will be for the enhanced bus stops on Lake Street at I-35W. The future options will be for up to 231 additional pylons and 6 additional horizontal signs. These options will be exercised throughout the 5 years with varying quantities and delivery schedules. Bid opening was held on February 23rd, and we received 2 bids for $2,010,710 and $2,133,160. And the low bidder was ASC Acquisition, doing business as Albrecht Sign Company. Next slide, please. Thank you. A brief overview of the evolution of these pylons over time. The new contract will bring the 3rd generation of station pylons to the Metro Transit BRT system. The 1st generation pylon, shown in the far left image on the slide, was used on the A-Line BRT. We were able to develop and improve the 2nd and 3rd generation pylons by collecting lessons learned from implementation of each previous generation, and also by incorporating feedback and internal Metro Transit feedback from internal Metro Transit departments in charge of operating and maintaining these pylons. Multiple internal design reviews were conducted for the 3rd generation pylons, and the iterative improvements focused on end user experience as well as long-term operability and maintainability. With the 2nd generation pylons shown in the middle image here, we included additional ventilation to reduce heat loading. We made the pylon structure larger and added lower panel access to integrate a communications enclosure and eliminate the need for an additional communications cabinet. We also replaced the access panel previously secured with screws on the first generation pylons with locking doors on the second generation pylon. The internal structure was strengthened to mitigate for wind loading issues, and the foundation was integrated with the shelter foundation to reduce utility conflicts. With the third generation design, the monitors are now included in the pylon contract, and a new monitor style with front axis is used for easier maintenance and repair. Previous versions required the entire monitor to be removed from the back of the pylon for any repairs needed on the computer components. The new pylon will provide better protection from insect intrusion as we shifted from a mesh screen to a foam tape product. There's also an improved pylon exterior attachment process for easier replacement of exterior elements in the event of minor damages. Lastly, we have fully integrated the pylons with the D-line fiber network for added reliability and better performance on the real-time signs. I would also like to note that with the third generation pylons, they share a common communications, electrical, and foundation interface with the second generation pylons. It allows us to leverage the third generation pylons as replacement for any second generation pylons. Next slide, please. So again, the proposed council action in business item 2021-69 would authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contract 19P 385A with ASC Acquisition Company, doing business as Albert Sign Company, for the fabrication and delivery of station pylons for BRT and enhanced bus stops at a cost not to exceed $2,010,710 with options for future purchases. At this point, Madam Chair, I will be happy to answer any questions on this business item.
Thank you, Shaheen. Are there questions from council members? Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the Met Council is responsible for maintenance and so forth, but with some type of warranty protection?
Madam Chair and committee members, yes, there is a warranty. There is a 3-year warranty protection that will be provided by the contractor.
All right, additional questions or comments? I would just say this is exciting to see stuff moving forward like this for the D-line. So thank you. Very excited to see this. So seeing no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2021-69, same week.
Cummings moves approval.
It's moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Seconded by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing and hearing none. Jenna, would you call the roll, please?
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Shane. Next, we are on to business item 2021-70, same week. It's Federal Performance Measure Adoption Resolution, and we have Dave Burns here.
Great. Thank you very much. Greg, if you wouldn't mind just going to the second slide there. Just as a little bit of an overview here, you've probably seen some federal performance measures come at you before, in particular the safety performance measures, which were passed just a couple of months ago. But MAP 21 established a federal performance measure program for state DOTs and MPOs. So today we will be examining the pavement, bridge condition, system reliability, and congestion mitigation and air quality targets for the region. So basically, the initial PM2 and PM3, and that's kind of the shorthand for the types of measures that we are examining. measures were adopted in 2018. We are at the midpoint of the performance period, and that allows us to kind of reassess our targets and adjust as desired. MPOs have the option to either support the statewide target set by MnDOT or set quantifiable targets specific to the MPO planning area. And we must adopt these targets no later than March 30th of this year. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more detail, the federal performance measures that we're going to be looking at are the pavement and bridge conditions. It's the percent of National Highway System bridges in good and poor condition, percent of interstate pavement in good and poor condition, the percent of non-interstate NHS pavement in good and poor condition, the system reliability measures, which is the percent of reliable person miles traveled on the interstate system, the percent of reliable person miles traveled on the non-interstate NHS system, and the truck travel time reliability index. Lastly, for the congestion mitigation and air quality performance measures, since we are in maintenance, we have to set these jointly with MnDOT. They include the on-road open source emissions measure targets, the percent of travel by non-single occupancy vehicles, as well as peak hour excessive delay, which is the annual hours of delay per capita. And I just want to mention that we met with MnDOT in early 2020 and hashed those targets out for the region. One quick note about the data that you are about to see, or what the targets are derived from, I should say. The targets were developed using 2019 data, which is the latest available data. It does not account for the impacts of COVID-19, which is likely to significantly impact the system reliability measures in particular in the future. Next slide, please, Greg. Okay, so in pink, we have sort of the bridge and pavement condition. So the bridge is the total deck area. Due to the current level of performance in the metro, the MnDOT adopted target of 35% good and 4% poor are reasonable targets for us to strive for. So we're recommending just going ahead and programming and planning to support the MnDOT adopted target. For pavement, the percent is 55% interstate pavement good condition and 2% in poor condition. And since this interstate pavement is owned and maintained by MnDOT, we as a region do not directly control it. Therefore, we are suggesting that we support the MnDOT targets. In terms of the non-interstate NHS in good and poor condition, we actually want to set a little bit higher, a little bit better of a target than what MnDOT has set. And that is in particular important in this region as these particular roadways carry a much higher amount of traffic than in outstate Minnesota. Moving on to the system reliability. Again, so the percent of reliable person miles traveled on the interstate, MnDOT set a target of 80%. Given our existing performance and the fact that we do have a lot more congestion within the region, we are actually proposing a target of 70% for the percent of person miles traveled on the non-interstate NHS. Again, MnDOT has an adopted target of greater than 90%. Due to the metro area conditions, that's not feasible. So we are suggesting greater than 80%. And for truck travel time reliability index, MnDOT has an adopted target of less than 1.5. We are suggesting a target of less than 2.2. And basically, the lower that index is, the better the performance. In terms of the on-road mobile source emissions, This is the sum of the emissions reductions of pollutants for all projects funded with CMAQ funds. The percent of travel by non-SOV, that's trending upward in the positive direction. We have kind of an aspirational target of 25%. And again, that's travel by non-single occupancy vehicles. And peak hour excessive delay, that's the annual hours of excessive delay per capita. We are suggesting 8.5 hours per year. Next slide, please, Greg. Okay, so our proposed action is to adopt the pavement and bridge condition, system reliability, and congestion mitigation and air quality performance measure targets. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Are there questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2021-70, same week.
Sterner will make a motion to approve the item.
Moved by Sterner. Is there a second?
Zarin will second.
Seconded by Zarin. Is there any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Jenna, you could call the roll.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zarin,
Zarin's aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Dave. Next, we are on to business item 2021-74. It's an authorized contract with Gillig Corporation for 30-foot buses. So we have Paul Colton here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm Paul Colton. I am the fleet manager for MTS. And this afternoon, I have for you the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to exercise bus purchase options utilizing the Commonwealth of Virginia's contract E194-75548 MA2274 with Gillig LLC to purchase up to 26 replacement transit buses in an amount not to exceed $12,820,000. From a procurement standpoint, the Commonwealth of Virginia contract has an FTA compliant contract that the Met Council is eligible to purchase from. And in fact, we did so several years ago to purchase some 40-foot buses for MVTA. From an operational standpoint, these buses operate on Metropolitan Council crosstown routes, connecting customers with transit centers and urban local routes to travel throughout the metropolitan area. You might see our 30-foot buses at Maplewood Transit Center, at the Mall of America, at the Southdale Transit Center, and in a variety of other crosstown corridors. From a bus manufacturing standpoint, these are heavy-duty buses similar to the construction of our 40-foot buses by Gillig. And these buses operate in long hours of service, 6 to 7 days per week. Gillig is the only current vendor of the heavy-duty 12-year 30-foot bus style. New Flyer used to manufacture one, and they have since gotten out of the market in the last 7 or 8 years. Unlike the 40-foot Gillig buses, which do have an electric propulsion option, the 30-foot buses currently do not. Gillig is working on plans to engineer that to the 30-foot buses in the next couple of years, so that will be an available product down the road. From a rational standpoint, these 26 buses will be replaced, have surpassed, and will reach their minimum useful life of 12 years and mileage, and mileage is in excess of 425,000 miles at that time. This funding is contingent on the approval of the first quarter amendment that you approved earlier in the meeting, business item 2021-57. And with that, I would be glad to entertain any questions that you have.
Councilmember Chambliss.
So you said that Gillig plans to work on electrifying the 30-foot buses in a couple years. How long would it take to be road ready with those type of buses?
That's a council member, Chair Barber. That's a great question. So in talking with the Gillig staff, with the 40-foot already available, it sounds like it would be about 2 years from now when they would have those to market ready for sale.
Okay, so it's a 40-foot that they plan to electrify.
So the 40-foot, Chair and council member, the 40-foot are already there as an option from Gillig for an electric bus at Gillig, and they're going to take that technology and implement that, engineer that to the 30-foot bus over the next 2 years. Yep.
Okay,
I apologize for any confusion.
Okay, thank you. So they'll be ready in 2 years on the 30-foot.
Madam Chair and council member, yes, for potentially in our next purchase of 30-foot buses down the road, that would be a potential option for MTS to do.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking is, and you probably know where I'm going with this, is that could we split this out, knowing that we would have those 30-foot electrified buses ready in a couple years? Why purchase all 26 now?
Madam Chair, council members. So one of the reasons is these are reaching, they have reached the end of their useful life, and there are concerns with, maintenance, durability, as we would continue to operate these beyond that term. And there are other challenges that MTS and its contractors need to be able to address as we move forward with a comprehensive plan for beginning the electrification fleet for MTS. And one of the challenges is, how do we work through the electrification of the garages that we don't own? And so we have been studying that issue and how we work with Xcel Energy on potentially leasing electric inputs. And then if we lost a contractor did not get a renewal in the 5-year period or at the end of 5 years, how would we then transition to another garage in a short period of time to electrify a different garage? And is that appropriate for us to do? Or do we move down a different path to potentially examine, do we begin to Met Council own its own garages and lease out that to private contractors? So just one of a few issues we need to work through as we begin to look at electrifying our MTS fleet.
All right, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a reason that the Metropolitan Council does not have its own active 30-foot bus contract with a vendor, and that we purchase instead through the Virginia contract?
Madam Chair, council member, so the procurement queue has been rather stacked up. So we've been working on the 40-foot bus procurement for several years, and it had several issues come up with it. And then working on the 60-foot bus procurement, which was just completed. And also examining from a rational standpoint the opportunity that existed on the Commonwealth of Virginia's contract with competitive pricing. We thought we could take advantage of that as it's open to all transit agencies in the U.S.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. A quick follow-up. Does it cost us anything additional to purchase through them?
Madam Chair, council member, there is no additional cost for us to utilize their agreement.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I know this is kind of unusual, but I'd like a little bit more. I'm curious about Councilmember Cummings' questions about this other vendor, this the Virginia contractor. Were you going anywhere with that?
So I'm going to pass this over to Jody Jacoby in procurement from as a procurement question.
Council member and Madam Chair, my name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the director of the procurement department. And this was a really unique opportunity that the council had to leverage an existing contract where the Commonwealth of Virginia had gone out for competitive solicitation, got amazing pricing, and then wasn't able to utilize all of their options. And because the quantity that the council needed, we wouldn't have been able to get such advantageous pricing. The determination was made to move forward with utilizing the additional buses that were available on this existing procurement. One more comment to note is this is absolutely very unique. The federal government, using Federal Transit Administration dollars, will only allow the council to utilize procurements that have federal terms and conditions included at the time of solicitation. The only exception to that requirement is if we're using what they call the state circular, and that's the state of Minnesota's cooperative procurement venture, where we can add the federal terms and conditions after the fact. So really, it was just an amazing opportunity since we only needed 26 buses to be able to get orders quickly with the quantity that we needed. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
I just want to say that was very helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Sterner.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions regarding, are we required to take the full 26 or could we take 8 or 12 and see, with, I understand you mentioned the buses we're replacing seem to be on its last legs and that kind of thing, but is there flexibility in this purchase proposal?
Madam Chair, Council Member, potentially there is that option. It is an up to 26 replacement buses. We've been working with Gillig as though we are planning on replacing 26 buses, and they are providing us with some advantageous bus build timing on these, moving us ahead of a couple of other projects that are coming down the road. But it's not out of the question.
Okay. Chair, I just had a follow-up question. Just in general, can you just tell me, obviously the 10 feet is the obvious one, but what's the difference in capacity between a 30-foot and a 40-foot bus and the usage of these buses of that then? Like, for example, why would the 40-foot bus, let's say with the electric, worked? I know you brought up some of the things with the building, but let's just say at a 40-foot versus a 30-foot, why this one and why not that one, et cetera?
Sure, Madam Chair, Council Member. So the 30-foot bus is it meets our needs, I think, from a better fit in the suburban communities as a smaller vehicle, and we've had comments from communities and neighborhoods on that with the shorter bus, and it is noticeably smaller in size from a seating standpoint. These seat about 25 compared to 37 on the 40-foot bus. So, and that fits within that service parameter of crosstown service for the passenger load needs that we experience. And so some of these routes too are transferred routes previously from Metro Transit where we have swapped routes, and they do have a little bit lower ridership, but they're a really important piece of the transit route infrastructure, and we want to maintain that. We want to maintain that route within the system because of those connections and where we are able to serve. So I hope that kind of helps in a broad sense answer your question.
Yeah, and then just to be clear on this, are these gas, diesel, hybrid? What is the fuel type of these particular buses on procurement, the 30-footers?
Sure, Madam Chair, Council Member, these are biodiesel buses, and they will have the 2021 EPA emission standards, which is a new diesel standard, the newest EPA standard in all of these buses. So these will be the cleanest biodiesel buses on the road.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, so this question is about I guess the supply chain. Well, not the supply. Our existing buses, how many buses do we have coming down the pike that would be getting closer to the end of their life and needing beyond this 26 replacement?
Madam Chair, Council Members, so MTS operates a total of 45 30-foot buses. So that would be 19 additional buses that will need to be replaced starting in several years. And there's a few 40-foot buses that will be converted to 30-foot buses as they were transferred from Metro Transit a few years ago for route changes, but are better applied with a 30-foot bus. So I'm anticipating probably in the neighborhood of 25 additional buses in the future.
Okay, thanks.
So just to provide some context, I think maybe something good to come back to the committee with at some point in time, just as a broader question, is how these procurements happen either for Metro Transit versus MTS in that process, so that there's a better understanding of that. I think that would be helpful, and I will talk with both Wes and Nick about that. Councilmember Sterner.
Yeah, I just was wondering on the next procurement, is there ways you can be able to flesh out some of these things about using buildings with electrification or adding electric charging stations or looking at hybrid type units, some other opportunities other than biodiesel for the next procurement?
Yes, Madam Chair, Council Member, similar to Metro Transit, MTS is looking at a high-level, broad plan for how we begin to electrify our fleet successfully, cost efficiently, and in an environmentally responsible way. We are very excited to begin implementing electric vehicles. We just need to make sure that it will work for our system and it will work for the transit operations and not be a major liability. But we are committed to working through all of the issues and planning that will take to begin to implement that, both in small bus and big bus.
Great, thank you.
All right, are there additional questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item number 2021-74.
Cummings moves approval.
It's moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Second by Gonzalez.
Seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, Jenna, could you call the roll, please?
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it very much. So that ends our business for today. So I would, just looking at the agenda items, I would say that agenda items 3 and 6 can go on consent, and the others are either same week or should go non-consent. If you all agree with that. Okay. All right, then we're on to information. So we have Metro Transit Service Update. We have Adam Harrington and Brian Funk here as our information item. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm working from my phone and my laptop here, so I'm going to switch over to the presentation, and Brian and I are happy to give you a brief update. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is an overview presentation of the state of the transit system as it is today, and as we think forward to how we might be making our adjustments down the road. This first slide may be a bit of a recap for most of you, hopefully, and we think back over the past year for all the things that have changed. We've really focused on how we can arrange our service in a safe and healthy customers and our employees. And we're always looking towards the public health guidance that we receive from MDH and as well as other properties, and learning tips and tricks for how they deploy their service. Following the governor's executive orders, and of course the essential trips only and face coverings required to help us manage that environment and reserve those seats for people who really need to ride transit. And you will be hearing a little bit more about the equity allowance that we've talked about in previous presentations. We'll be coming back at the end of April for a broader conversation about how we've evaluated our bus scheduling. Next slide. As of September 2020, really through June 2021, our transit service is essentially 80% of our operating budget pre-pandemic. And it's not changed, and so we've got a high level of service that we did reduce service based on market demand, as we've talked about before. Primarily when we think about those who can work remotely and how we've adjusted service on Commuter Express route. We returned to weekday pre-stay-at-home order levels on most core local bus routes, however, and so we're nearly at 100%, which you'll see in the coming slides. We have one adjustment that went into effect for the March pick, and that is really adjusting our frequency of service on Blue and Green Line to better reflect the pattern of ridership throughout the day. So the 10-minute frequency that we operate throughout the day really starts a little bit later in the morning, and prior to that, it's about every 15 minutes throughout the rest of the day. And as we have this presentation to currently have 55 routes that are suspended. Next slide. Here's the bar chart that represents the level of service as it's scheduled. This is the total number of trips that we have operating today. These categories, you'll see that between bus rapid transit supporting local, core local bus routes, suburban local bus routes, and LRT, we're between 9% of our previously scheduled service pre-pandemic, and between 25 and 33% on Commuter Express, again reflecting the significant travel patterns for those who are primarily working environments and the opportunity to work remotely. Next slide. And as you heard in the manager's remarks, our ridership continues to be at about 60% when you take into consideration the system as a whole. And of course, compared to last year, at the time, we're about 95% down on Commuter Express ridership, but we expect that to start to change as the restrictions on the pandemic are lifted due to the decline of the virus. And we're hopeful that that continues to be the case, and perhaps this year we can start to turn the curve on this. Next slide. The illustration of the park and ride usage. And you can see in 2020 usage significantly at our park and ride lots, and we have ample capacity across the system that will be focus our efforts on as we return to service later this year and next year. Next slide. This chart represents the level of ridership throughout the day. On the left side, it says midnight. That's the end of our service day in hours, but it really starts to pick up starting at 4 a.m. with some of our early trips. And then the blue bars represent our current post-COVID ridership pattern, and the dotted line that looks like bat ears on the screen was our pre-COVID ridership pattern. And those two peaks represent the morning rush hour and the afternoon rush hour. And that also represents some of the reasons we have such a high peak bus operator count as well in normal times. And so we're being able to manage our service quite effectively, as Brian will talk about. But I think it's an interesting picture that illustrates the difference in travel patterns pre and post COVID. And this blue bar chart also represents our experience on LRT. So just bolstering the idea that we're not as focused on our rush hour schedules and having the same level of service as we had pre-COVID. Next slide. Looking at the geography of how we have our distributed, this is the number of bus or rail trips scheduled at any station across a weekday. And you will see this map, the blue dots represent bus, the green dots represent LRT, the yellow orange areas represent the areas of constant poverty, which is just one way to represent that population, certainly an inclusive definition, and we have many more metrics that we'll share with you later in April. But as I will point out, on the fringe of the suburbs in this map, you'll see quite a few dots that show the number of bus trips scheduled. And if we flip to the next slide, many of those dots go away in September 2020. And again, reflecting the nature of travel that's happening in our system and across the region, with a number of travel patterns being suspended due to remote work. Next slide. As we how we can fully open capacity, we are watching the trends of COVID. We are coordinating with public health guidance and looking forward to the day when we can really begin to operate our vehicles with full passenger capacity. Right now, we're operating at 25% of vehicle capacity on trains. Next slide. Brian.
All right, and council members, thanks for having us today. I'm excited to be able to bring some good news for you, and it's a really positive time for us here at Metro Transit on the operator workforce front. And so for the last couple of years, Metro Transit has been working really hard to build a foundation for operator recruitment because we found ourselves in a workforce shortage situation. That script completely flipped last year about this time, as we all know, when our ridership and demand really dried up and all but evaporated aside from essential trips. And what we've done over the last year was manage within our approved budget, but start to work our way to allow some of our longest serving operators the opportunity to retire. We have not been hiring and bringing on new people in a year while we waded through these uncertain waters. And so right now we need to be able to deliver our service just under 1,200 total full-time and part-time weekday operators. We do have budget for additional allowances, as has been adopted by the council. And right now we are still within our approved budget at 1,236 full-time and part-time weekday operators. And so what that allows us to do is to be able to plan accordingly, to gear up for demand, be able to plug in extras when operators report that their buses are too full, allows us to take advantage of being able to maybe have more service than is warranted in some areas because of uncertainties like the resumption of Minneapolis public schools. And so that type of planning is ongoing, and the additional staff allows us to do that. But again, be fiscally conservative and responsible. On the other hand, we know that that's not going to last forever. We still have many operators who are nearing the end of their careers and looking for other opportunities within our organization. So we posted in February a full-time operator posting. This is the first time I can recall in my 19 years at Metro Transit that we've had a full-time operator posting. out to the public. And so this is quite the opportunity. Traditionally, we need our operators to come in for those part-time weekday positions to meet the peak demands that Adam had showed on the demand and ridership slide. What we have now is a lot flatter demand. And so we're fully staffed, and our part-time operators, many of them are very content with the position they hold. And rather than trying to force or get into anything that would create problems within our operators' schedules, we're recruiting for full-time to come right off the street into training, as it were. And so our forecast based on the expected attrition rates is that we need to hire about 50 people before the end of summer, the August service changes. We think that we'll be able to achieve that without a lot of work. We have a dedicated staff at the instruction center who's really excited to get going again and adopt a hybrid model of accepting applications and testing and interviewing in a COVID safe way and starting training in a way that's going to allow us to do it without risk of spreading COVID or infections. And so we've used the idle time to our advantage to be able to plan for this so that we're able to ramp up. As noted here, as of about a week and a half ago, we had received just under 100 applications. Good news is that a considerable percentage had their CDL or a CDL permit. That was not the case for the last couple years. And so we're looking forward to beginning interviews this week and then bringing staff on board next month so we can ramp up. We have also taken a look at and are in the process of finalizing revisions to ensure that we have the best world-class training structure in place for our operators. And so when you're perpetually trying to catch up, you're always looking at ways that how can we continue to do this faster. We want to keep a high professionalism, but that demand is always in the back of everybody's mind. And so right now, without that pressure, we've taken a look in ensuring that we have our training curriculum up to speed in the right order for the right durations, and that it fits in nicely with our operator apprenticeship program that we're extending beyond that first 12 months, and we're looking at expanding it another 6 months because we know that that this job requires a lot of work between both the new employees as well as those key mentors who are shepherding in and bringing people on board. Next slide. Back to Adam.
Great, thanks, Brian. Just a couple more slides to wrap things up. This is looking at items that we're actively working on right now. We're closely monitoring the transit market for both commuter, express, and local services. We continue to focus on those local markets. We know that they're important for our customers. They always have been, and we expect they always will be. And so we're wanting to make sure that they're strong, frequent, and 7-day a week where possible. We're also looking at the commuter express to downtowns, obviously the biggest variable over the past year. And we've spent quite a bit of time talking with our downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul business partners as they navigate the COVID situation for themselves and where their employees are going to be going. So we continue to work with them and understand what the potential travel pattern changes might be post-pandemic, and thinking about how we can fit the bill for what their needs are and the employees' needs as well. Next slide. And lastly, I just wanted to wrap up with some of the things that you've heard about, but we are continuing to work on that are positives. Obviously, we're continuing to still pursue the construction of D-Line that we hope to open in 2022 and B-Line in 2024 and Orange Line late this year. So we're excited about the progress with that project. And also maybe a little bit less known, better bus routes. Wes mentioned the Better Bus Stops program that we'll be sharing more information about to improve our bus stops. But we also do this with bus routes. We have passed about Route 63, which serves Grand Avenue in St. Paul and East 3rd on the east side of St. Paul. We'll be making a service improvement to the Route 63 to run every 15 minutes in June. And we're also adding a new new connection, a new route, Route 323, that's shown on the map here between Sunray, Don McKnight to Lower Afton, and across to serve Woodlands Hospital and the retail at Valley Creek Shopping Center in Woodbury. So we think it's going to be a really good way to test those suburban job markets and making those new connections. So look for more information on that as well. And then, of course, we have ongoing transitway planning with our partners throughout the region as we think about how we want to build our system for the future. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Adam and Brian. Are there questions from council members? Awfully quiet. I'll ask one more time. Any questions from anyone? All right, you guys must have done a good job. They're pretty quiet. Gotta like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. And appreciate the update and keeping us updated throughout the process, especially with all the effects of COVID and impacts on how we're doing our planning. We really appreciate it. All right, that concludes our business for the evening. Unless council members have anything else, pause quickly, and we can be adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.